Hello. I know it's risky, but I want to talk about a conversation that is my most popular YouTube video. Has 15,000 roughly views. And that's the difference between an asset and a configuration item. That video is almost 10 years old and frequently is the highest searched, the highest viewed video I have on YouTube. If you're looking for my channel on YouTube, it's YouTube/Jeffrey T. Fertiller. I'm pretty easy to spot given tall, ugly guy, glasses, that sort of thing. But I want to talk about the difference between an asset and a configuration item. I've learned a lot over these last 10 years, a full decade. And I think what we think of as an asset and what we think of as a configuration item has changed over that time as well. But I encourage you to go back and look at that. I list many types of each. I was very detailed. I still am, if you know me. But let's talk about this. If you are talking asset management, you are talking about keeping something on the record for a specific financial reason. I have been places that kept everything above $100, $50, whatever it is, and that is what they kept. And so they kept all of this data. And so when you have an asset and you have an asset class within your AMDB, asset management database, your classes will be database, laptops, whatever. And you'll need to know the owner of the asset, the location, and all those, which are attributes. So you'll have let's say a laptop. That's the asset. Almost got ahead of myself, didn't I? And then you'll have all the attributes like owner, when acquired, when's the warranty go out, what's the location, all that sort of thing on that asset record. When we look at a configuration item record, a CI within the CMDB, we will look at maybe the relationships. And so the thing that makes a CI record so unique is its relationships. It could be related to, it could be a server that's related to databases or related to an application. It also might be part of a service. And services are the big thing for configuration items that have popped up since I recorded that a decade ago. Almost every tool in the service management space wants to have services where you can visually see an application is supported by this database, this server, this network that goes across, and it's located in this data center. One of the other things that's popped up in these last few years is the proliferation of software as a service. Your SaaS configuration items are huge in delivering your IT services, your technology services, your business services. So you have to include SaaS in there. One other thing that you must include, at least on the asset side, and that is data. This is a perspective that very few hold, but I hold it very strongly. Your data is your most important asset you have in your organization. Let me say that again. Your data is the most important thing, the most important asset you have in your organization. When you look at a breach and they say it was worth however many billions of dollars, you know that organization doesn't have any other assets that are that rich, right? You need to protect your assets, each type, each class, in a certain way, specific way. Obviously, you're going to protect your laptops differently than you would your servers, differently than your data. And now, in these last few years, we have the Internet of Things that are both assets and configuration items. So what's new on the configuration items, the services, and how everything is fitting together. What's new on the asset side is SaaS, IoT, all the different types of assets that are just sprawling. I once led both departments at a very large firm. We had Peloton bikes in there as assets and configuration items. And so, one last thing, you can have a piece of equipment that's an asset but not a configuration item just because it's not worth putting in an incident. And that's the rule of thumb I always use of whether or not something's worth tracking as a CI. Let's make something abundantly clear. Everything that you track as an asset or a CI takes resources, takes human resources to get it right and keep it maintained, that sort of thing. But I have seen a Peloton bike. I mean, who would have thought that, right? But that was important because it had data on it. It has people's data, and you really couldn't let it be that Joe Smith weighs 300 pounds and he's trying to ride his way into good health, right? You couldn't let that data get out there. But you had to know that that bike was connected in form of service to something else. But one specific example from my history, my experience, I worked at a place that had a wireless router within meeting rooms. That was an asset, but not a configuration item. And the reason why is a configuration item has to be something that if it went down, you would create it or open an incident for. And in fact, your CMDB is so strategic that its scope defines what's a change, what's an incident, what's a problem. Because if it's not a configuration item or an attribute of one, then it's not an incident, it's not a change, it's not a problem. So think of your scope for your configuration management database, your CMDB, as defining the scope of your change management, your incident management, problem management, even your service management organization as a whole. So if you see it in that lens, your CMDB, your CI scope, attribute scope is very important. But you can't have everything because then it would take more resources than it was worth to keep it up. These are great leadership conversations. And so with your assets, your asset managers will work with the finance and accounting group to say, how quickly should we depreciate these assets? How do we make sure that we refresh the assets on a certain type of scale? What's the warranty? All that sort of thing. There's a lot to think about. And lastly, in most tools, your assets and your CIs are used, they're discovered by the same discovery within the same tool. And so if you get one side of it wrong, you're probably going to get the other. And so this is where that discovery is really important, because you discover the CIs poorly, you're probably going to discover your assets poorly. And so one discovery is a good thing, but it also can be a limiting factor. I welcome your discussion. You can tell I'm passionate about this thought. My name is Jeffrey T. Fertiller with Service Management Leadership, and thank you for being a part of what we do. Please subscribe, follow, and rate wherever you are listening to this, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye.